In the deep recesses of one's mind, there is a voice, a guiding light through the darkness, a connection to the other side.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a little, poor little me.
Pathway to spiritual that echoes with enlightenment. The voice of spirit.
The voice of spirit.
You are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way, and that furthermore, this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies.
Your journey starts here and now. With your host and connection to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, a very warm welcome to you. I'm going to skip the usual introduction of morning and evening, etc., and hope that you are really, really well. We have a lovely lady, Ellen Red, on the show. She's been on the show before, and if you want to, you can look at her on Facebook and make contact there. And Ellen has quite an extraordinary story, really, from near-death experiences and experiencing violence and astral travel, and she can be described as a shaman, twin flame and guide, and a medium clairvoyant. And so she's a very busy lady, and if you do want a reading or help or whatever it might be, then do look for her on Facebook. And one of the things that's really prominent now because of the COVID thing, it's something that's really brought our mortality to the fore. And if we are not in fear for ourselves, then perhaps we're in fear for loved ones, because even with this knowledge, and I went this through myself when I was quite young, having this knowledge and getting to that moment of passing, with that perhaps slight apprehension of, was it all true? Was it a dream? You know, was it imagined? That slight apprehension, we can all have that despite the great knowledge that some people possess. But if you've been there and had a near-death experience, then there is that knowledge there that, you know, everything's fine. So because of COVID and the atmosphere of fear that we've got today, we're going to be talking about some of those things. We're going to be talking about reincarnation and perhaps that fear of death, amongst other things. So if you want to call in, we're taking readings in the second half of the show. But if you want to call in and perhaps talk about your experiences, if you've had them, or some of those fears and concerns that you might have. So without further ado, hi Ellen, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you doing?
I'm very well. We had Susan Schatzer on the show last week, and there's a workshop that I'm blessed to be part of, and there are 6 other mediums, I think, that we're doing. And the reason that has come about is because there's this fear at the moment, isn't there? There's COVID, there's so many stresses and tensions in the world, and the timing seems to be quite apt for that to come to the fore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and as I said in the introduction, you know, sometimes even if we have this knowledge, but we haven't been to the brink, or past the brink and passed away and then come back, there can still be that slight apprehension and fear there, can't there?
There can. I kind of make fun of it. I like to say that you know, you have to die in order to be able to live, and it's true, because once you do cross over, there's no more fear. You realize that the whole thing is an illusion. Really, it's a mortal reality, but it's not your real reality, and death really isn't real. So it's kind of fun for those of us who have crossed over to joke about it, because we know that it's not real. But for those who haven't, yes, I can see why there's still a lot of fear for them, and so it's good that there's people like yourself out there doing the work you're doing to help them through.
And yourself as well, you know. And there's a very famous medium, Gordon Smith, who's he's known as the world's most accurate medium because of the information that he gives, you know, telephone numbers, street name and names, all kinds of stuff. And he has a saying, which the first time I heard it, I found hilarious, but it's right on the money. And Gordon Smith says, "You can't die for the life of you." And it's, you know, it's one of those things, you hear it first of all and you think, well, that's really odd. But then you think, actually, oh, sorry, my guide's come in and said, yeah, you're dead right. And I wasn't going to say that, but that's come out as well. He's obviously on form tonight. Sorry, I was interrupting you.
That's hilarious. No, I was just going to say, I like to say something kind of similar where I've laid down and tried to die a million times and they just won't let me. You know?
Yeah. And again, you know, I think one of the things which people also miss is that we have lived before, we've therefore died before, and of course being reborn. And in that context, it isn't anything new. And some cultures actively embrace that, don't they? You know, in Mexico, they have the Day of Death and things. And certainly if you look at the older tribes, you know, tribes in the Amazon, the Aborigines, that kind of thing, their whole attitude and teaching and way of life embraces that final act. I think it's what we might call, I was going to say the more advanced nations, but you know, I think certainly spiritually we're way behind. But I think as we learn more and we become more civilized, dare I say it, the more fear is kind of built into living, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting for me that the times that I've had the death experience, there's like this spark feeling, right? I don't know if you experienced that or not, but it's like a spark. And it's the same exact feeling that I felt when I became pregnant. So birth and death are kind of the same thing, and it's this spark that you feel in the core of your soul, and it's the same feeling actually, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, because my guide said many years ago that really what you're doing is exiting through a door that you made an entrance in. And I've got to say, I learned something every day, and I hadn't connected what you've said at all before. You know, the connection of giving birth and that spark and an entrance into the world. I don't think it's anything that a man can experience. You know, because if we're lucky enough to be present at the birth of our children, we are very much a bystander, and we're not connected to it in that way. So I want to thank you for that, because that's never occurred to me before.
Oh, okay, good. Well, good. We can learn something every day then, huh?
Oh, yeah, I do. I've got to say, it really makes me feel humble, and especially, you know, with what you've said, they are intrinsically linked, and it's like, why wouldn't it be? You know, and I just feel so dumb, you know, because here I am at 63 years old, and it's like, why wouldn't it be? And I'm thinking, oh, I feel so stupid. But
That's so funny.
but
some of that's just our social conditioning in the world. You know, there's been many cultures around the globe that, and I don't want to turn the whole, you know, topic into this, but to where they talk about woman being God because she has the capacity to bring the soul from one realm to another.
Absolutely, and I think that's something that we do forget. You know, if we look at Cleopatra and Egypt and that kind of thing, you know, the society was, from I suppose a modern sense of feeling, turned on its head. women were worshipped, they were appreciated.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just interesting because if you talk to women, a lot of them, when they become pregnant, they know right away when it happens. It's like the spark of life. It zaps you, and it's the same zap feeling that I felt when I had my death experiences. Just that spark of just death and birth. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and in fact, it has reminded me, and I've not told many people this, and I know my children will be mortally embarrassed if they hear the program, but certainly with my first child, without going into too many details, with that immediate second, I heard a voice say, "That's it." And I thought, she's pregnant. So it wasn't the same kind of life force feeling that you're talking about, of like, I suppose, flicking a switch and feeling the change. For me, it was more not an instruction so much, but it was more of, right, that's done, that's completed. Yeah, so I kind of, I suppose if we're looking at a woman, then that's first-hand information, and for me, the other was like second-hand information, but very close. And I'd always wondered about that from because it only happened once, and I have two children, so there must have been something special there, just to kind of say, right, the process has begun, for the second child, etc. Yeah, so it's I don't think my kids will thank me for that, but there you go. I have to be truthful.
Well, I'm sure. Look, the masculines have their own, their own guidance, and we all have it, and we have different gifts, of course. But I'm sure that it happened on the second one. Maybe you just weren't hearing it or whatnot. And as you know, sometimes when the spirit comes through, it's a very subtle, very, very gentle whisper. So, there's a lot going on when babies are born, and it would be really difficult sometimes to get in that peaceful state where you could hear it. So, makes sense. Interesting.
You hear a lot of conversations and a lot of experiences of people saying, I was there when my wife passed, or I was there when, one of my parents passed, and we see that ejection of energy. We can see the past. There's that moment. I can't ever recall anybody saying, I can see the energy being ejected into the world as the baby's born. I have spoken to someone, and it was with my first daughter, and I was too wrapped up in it, too grounded, and within 5 minutes they've looked and said, she's been here before. So that nurse knew immediately, but I don't know of anyone that's had that kind of entrance experience as people have with the exit.
Well, while you were saying that, I was kind of getting the message that it is happening, but it's happening around the mother because she's got the child in her womb. So it's like the crowning of the Christ. It's like that glowing energy you talk about with the pregnant woman is because she's got double aura with her and the baby that's incarnating in. So maybe that's part of the entrance energy. I don't know. That just came to mind.
Well, that makes perfect sense to me. And again, I wouldn't want to distract from the mother, because obviously there's a lot going on. But I think for a guy, and I can only really speak for myself, you're completely grounded because of the moment. So perhaps it's something that for me just switched off. But I've never heard others talk about it. It's if anyone has that experience and would like to share what they've been through, then do call in, and you can get us on 702-425-9230, because this again, I suppose in one sense it's an obvious thing to talk about, but it's something I can't recall ever coming up. So it's 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 interesting for me. Sorry, my guy was making me laugh. Um, he just said, "Interesting, isn't it?" So I was just talking. And he's got a lovely sense of humour. He does distract me from time to time, I've got to say, bless him. But there you go. Yeah, it's because we're also going to touch on what I introduced the program with, which is reincarnation, and that fear that's seems to be very much around the globe now, doesn't it? This COVID thing, it's drawn our attention.
Yes, it has. And again, I think it's awesome that we're doing this this today to hopefully it will touch some people along the way. But yeah, I think that the more that you can really remember or connect with that part of yourself that is eternal, to step away from the fear, the more you can just enjoy life. You're really just robbing your own self of life when you're caught into that fear energy. So hopefully, whatever unfolds in our conversation today, hopefully it will.
I think you're right. Because with what's going on, and if you don't understand the mechanism of birthing or of passing, then your focus, especially perhaps if you're religious and the kind sorry, he's just said, oh, you mean the hell mode, with the focus on I haven't been good. I mean, let's face it, most of us haven't. We're all here to learn, but I think if you've been brought up that way and you think there are other things waiting for me, then that fear kicks in. But it's there's an old saying that something like that concentrates the mind wonderfully, but I think we concentrate on it and that fear that's there, and I think that's part of what's gripping the world today. I think that in itself is a tragedy.
Well, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think that in and of itself, for those people that are in that state of fear and suffering and not wanting to face God or whatever you want to call it, because they're afraid they're going to be punished or whatnot, that is an indication and a sign for them to do some shadow healing, because realistically, you shouldn't have to be living even in this, we have only the now, right? So you shouldn't be living in a state of feeling, subconsciously guilt or shame or things about yourself that you've done or experienced in life that you're not happy about, or you're afraid to face the divine. Because once you do the shadow healing, you can heal from that and clear it from your energy field and be at peace at all times, whether you're incarnate or not incarnate. So it's the same thing, right? If you cross over, you're still going to have the same energy to heal and clear through. You're still in the same state of consciousness, right?
Absolutely. I think there's that awareness of the transition, but because we are absolutely of that moment, and we're the same from one moment physically and mentally to the next, it's very few that have a more complete understanding, unless of course you are connected with this subject. So you still carry with you that fear that you had moments before that transition, and so you wake up thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be judged, or whatever the hang up might be.
Right. As opposed to just facing it and healing through it, even in your consciousness as an incarnate being, which you can do so that you can actually live on the earth happily. Isn't that the whole purpose of the work that we do spiritually, is to bring heaven to earth so that you can live fully empowered as a divine soul in your incarnation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we were to sum up the work of spirit, that's it. It's to take away that fear, and so we can live life. So many people don't do things because of fear. And I suppose, in a sense, that is kind of bringing heaven to earth when you're released from all those fears of what you can't do and what you shouldn't do and what you might not want to do, and express that and live those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and I think to live through that kind of thing is a wonderful thing, to have that fear taken away. One of the problems, I think, with concentrating on the negative and that stopping us living is one of the real problems that we have. We've been inducted to, haven't we, really? I think from birth.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been completely bombarded with negative things and things that take us down a notch in vibration, or 10 or 20 or 100.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
we're inundated with things that are meant to lower our vibration, from things that are in our food, to things in the air, to things that we watch on TV, to just everything. Our sexuality's been distorted, our physical beings have been distorted, and all of that is causing us to lower in vibration. But that's why I do shadow healing, and I'm sure you do too, is that when you do your own work and you do heal your own shadow, you're able to remove all of that programming and shut it from yourself, so that you can live with no more clouds over your head in your everyday now, no matter what's going on. COVID isn't bothering me. I mean, I'm not, my life hasn't changed really at all with COVID, other than the fact that I do occasionally have to put one of those masks on when I go into a store. But my lifestyle was already kind of that of a, I don't go out and go to crazy raging parties anymore and those types of things, because I'm more focused on my well-being and my happiness and my peace and feeling good and going to places that fulfill my soul, not the other stuff. And so, as you start to get through your healing, you can actually live a life of absolute abundance and joy, even in the midst of chaos. And I think that's the best part.
I think so. And of course, as you mature, you see the world in a different way and you look at it in a different way. And I guess for people that live to be very old, there's that understanding that you know a bit more about life, you've more accepting of passing, and that fear is taken in that way as well. We're going to be talking more about that, and we're going to be talking also a little bit about reincarnation, which you also have experience of. So we're going to be right back after this.
Inspirational clairvoyant medium, psychic, and your connection to the spirit, the host of the Voice of Spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, warm welcome back, and you're in the second quarter of the show, and we're talking to Ellen Red, and she's had a vast array of experiences, including astral travel and near death. And we're talking about reincarnation, and we're talking about the fear of death, in this overshadowing from COVID, which concentrates the mind, and the world is never peaceful in that sense. There's always something going on. So we're talking about those things, and the fact that whatever's going on, we shouldn't have fear. So welcome back, Ellen.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you've had experience of reincarnation. So tell us what that has felt like and what that's meant for you.
Okay. I've actually had quite a few different experiences with that. My very first one is when I drowned when I was a small child. And of course, I grew up in a religious upbringing, and my dad did not at all believe in reincarnation. So when I told him that I saw that happened, and I understood that was what happened with me, he was very upset. And so it's hard for me to embrace. Like, I think that happens to a lot of people that have those experiences, that there's a lot of misunderstanding and misteachings and misguided information, I think, out there in relation to that. And you know as well as I do that when people get very, very wrapped into their religious belief systems, that sometimes it doesn't leave room for true, genuine, authentic spiritual experience. And so it can get in the way of actually experiencing things. But anyhow, that was my first time around. So I was a little 4-year-old telling my dad that I had been reincarnated, and he didn't like that.
Well, it kind of goes against the fundamentals of some religions. I mean, there are many religions that believe in reincarnation, but that's all been taken out of the Bible, Catholicism. And of course, if they're saying, you're going to enter the kingdom of heaven and live forever, where does that leave coming back for another go? It's slightly awkward, isn't it?
Well,
so I can understand that. Yeah,
it's really funny because in the same religion that my dad is, and I believe all religions understand and teach that we're eternal beings. So why wouldn't it make sense that we're eternally traveling around and incarnating in different skins and doing different things eternally because we're eternal? It's like they teach on one hand that we are, and then on the other hand, heaven forbid that we're eternal and I was here before.
Absolutely, because it's like, you can imagine if you're only going to incarnate once and you go, right, I want to be black, I want to be a woman, I want to be in this time, and they slap you on the back and go, right, you got one shot, off you go. It's really daunting, isn't it? Because it's like, I've never done this before. Oh my God.
Yeah, honestly, if we only had one go around, we would all be in the bad place forever, because from what I understand, we don't learn that quickly. And so, and by the way, my understanding is that, in one lifetime you may be a male that goes out and rapes women, and then in another lifetime you're going to be a woman that gets raped, so that you can have the duality experience of both ends of the spectrum, so that your soul can evolve. It's such a bigger picture than the humans like to see. So
absolutely, and it's on every facet of, whether you were a bystander at that action, whether you were a police officer and you thought, do you know what, I'm at the end of my shift, I'm going to write this down as something. There are so many angles to that. As you were speaking there, my guide showed me a rather humorous thing of, nobody writing, of a second-hand car salesman, and he's just sold you this thing, and he can see you going down the road and the engine falls out, and he turns to his mate and said, right, let's close, we're going home. It's like you're on your own, no insurance, no backup, nothing. And what kind of God would give us, this is your only shot, go for it? As you say, we're here to learn, so first time round we're going to make a lot of mistakes, and it's like, that's it.
Right.
Yeah. So it's I wouldn't say that, like you, I wouldn't say that as a fair system. Wave you goodbye. It's like putting you on a bike downhill. Down the side of a mountain, you've got no brakes, and go, bye, see you later. It's like, you'll enjoy it, I promise.
I just know how much I've made mistakes in this one incarnation alone, and how hard it is to just get through certain lessons. And I just know, and I mean, I'm so grateful for the deep experiences I've had spiritually to have remembrance of other lifetimes and stuff. But I can't imagine being in my skin right now and not having that awareness and really believing that this is it and I got to make it or break it. I mean, yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
It is. I mean, it's terrible stress, isn't it? Because, and I can understand why some people that have ego, or some people think, I'm going to make $1 million if it kills me. Moreover, I'm going to make $1 million if it kills you. I'm going to go out and sell drugs and do whatever I want, because this is my one chance to enjoy myself. We really need to turn that on its head.
Right, absolutely. I've had a couple of other pretty profound experiences where I've seen like other past lives that I had. I saw that I was like a Samson and Delilah, like I was Delilah in the Samson and Delilah story. I saw that I lived. I mean, I've seen a lot of different layers of past lives, just in different times in my life with different experiences that happened that brought up past life memory. And so, it's not like it just happened one time. And and I think that the more that we do our soul work, and I tell this to clients of mine that, the more that we do healing and soul work, and peel away layers of false programming, the more that stuff comes to the surface. Those memories come to the surface because they're within your DNA, right?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that struck me when I was young, and it was a very striking incarnation. It really came home to me, and that was that I realized as that was all happening that I had an incarnation as a woman, and as a woman really familiar with my own body, and really understanding at that point how excuse me, how a woman thinks. Her experience of the world is very different to a man's on almost every level. And to live there, and the smells from where I was, and actually understanding that. And I think what the most shocking thing for me was that it was all so familiar. And I'm part of my head is saying, I'm a woman, I'm in this situation. The shocking thing was, this is all familiar, it's okay. And I was trying to get that, straight in my head. And that was the first time that I'd realised that I had been a woman in another part. And shocking for, I suppose, in a sense, all the right reasons, but a lot of people would say shocking for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you brought that up too. I mean, it's like, I think it's important too that a lot of people understand also that some of the feelings and fears and things that they're experiencing in this lifetime may actually be coming from other lifetimes and experiences that they have there and they don't understand. And as you also know, when you don't heal a certain energy within yourself, you will repeat that pattern. Yeah. So for me, when I was born, I drowned. I had an understanding that I had drowned in other lifetimes and died and had to reincarnate. So when I drowned, I saw that I drowned in a past life. And I attracted that experience to myself again because it hadn't been completely made conscious within myself and it hadn't been healed. So now I was able to make it conscious, become conscious of that experience, and to become conscious of the fear itself of water and to heal through it so that I'm no longer afraid of water. So I'm no longer attracting drowning experiences to myself.
Absolutely. I did a reading for a lady, and I've kind of mentioned this on air a few times. And I was doing this reading, and it was kind of, if I say the normal stuff, I'm sure people would understand, but it was going through that. And I suddenly got a video running in my head, and it was nighttime, and I could see, I can't remember if she was a woman or a man in that at the moment, but I could see her running, and I could see torches, and I could hear dogs, and this woman was being chased. And I described her running through this forest. It was fairly dense, and she got to a fast-flowing river that was really deep. Mm-hmm. And she looked backwards, and it's a stark choice. You're literally going to get torn limb from limb, or you jump. And she jumped and she drowned. And she said to me, "Oh my God, I've had a fear of dogs and I've had a fear of deep, fast running water." She said, "It's broken, it's lifted." And so it took away that fear. And I think it's important. That's happened a couple of times during readings where I suppose I could say that spirit have hijacked it, because the experience that needs to be broken, or that fear, it's right at that time, for that to be dealt with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
Tell us a little bit about the shadow healing that you do, because I'm sure there's some out there that wouldn't know what that was and how it works.
Well, the shadow healing is basically bringing to the consciousness that which is unconscious. And of course, Carl Jung is the leader of psychology. He talked a lot about shadow healing in his work. But it's where, as long as something is subconscious within your being, it's like it's running in the background of your being, and it's affecting you. So it's kind of like having a computer system where you've got all these background programs running, and it's causing your system to slow down. Well, when you have unhealed, repressed energy that you're unconscious of, whether it be in this lifetime or another, it's running in the background of your mind and you're not aware of it. It's causing you to manifest the things that you actually don't want. So you're consciously choosing to run around and chase your dollars or do whatever it is that you're trying to do, but you keep manifesting things you don't like, and you don't understand why. Is because you've got these background programs that are running, that are bogging you down, that are of subconscious memories and subconscious wounding. And the shadow healing brings those things to the consciousness, so that you're able to heal it, release it, and then begin to manifest the things that you actually do want without that stuff in the background.
Yeah, because again, I've spoken about manifestation to many people, and also live as well. And I've come to realize that roughly 80% of people that try and manifest, it really doesn't work. And it's for that exact reason that they're thinking so much about what they don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finally realized, because for me it was a hidden thing that I needed to learn as well, and when I realized that, that's when manifestation really works. And it's interesting that you brought that up.
Yeah.
That aspect.
Yeah, and also the energy blocks themselves from the wounds that are running in the background cause your whole system to get dysfunctional. It jacks up your whole system basically, and it causes an inability for you to really, I mean, it causes depression, it causes physical illness and all sorts of things. So shadow healing really takes that energy and unplugs it from you and releases it, so that you have a clean, clear, smooth sailing ship. Otherwise, you're kind of discombobulated and scatterbrained and depressed and miserable and suicidal, and you don't even understand why. And a lot of it's from that repressed emotion or those repressed memories. And some of that can be coming from past lives. So, I mean, you'd be amazed at, well, but a lot of people would be really amazed at realizing how much of that's coming from past lives. And it's causing you in this incarnation to recreate the same things that you don't want to see. And I will give you an example of that. One of the biggest issues that we have as a collective altogether of wounding and karmic cycles and shadow healing that needs to be done on a collective level is the issue of pedophilia. Because pedophilia, the child gets wounded and harmed, and then somewhere along the journey, the person may later on become abusive or become, a sexual predator or whatever else. And it may even be where in a past life they were a victim of childhood abuse, and now in this life they don't remember it, but they're a perpetrator and they don't understand why. Is because there's repressed, unhealed energy there. And so, once it's healed, it no longer has power over you.
Yeah, and it raises that interesting question, doesn't it, of what we're learning in the incarnation. Is it just kind of a fresh sheet, and it's like, the soul saying to us, I need to learn that and that and that? Or is it a mixture, which I think it is, of I need to learn this and deal with this, but as an added flavour, if you like, a real hot chili, I'm bringing this from another life, which is going to complicate things.
And that's what I've also come to experience. So it seems a double-edged sword in that sense, doesn't it?
It is, until you actually break the cycle. But see, you have to open your mind and be willing to see beyond just this lifetime in order to even heal those things. And that's why I think a lot of people are caught in a trap, in a reincarnation trap. And speaking of reincarnation, you know, in truth, we weren't. And here's where I think a lot of religious people have. I understand what they're trying to say and what was in the Bible that led them to believe that reincarnation isn't real, is that we weren't originally really meant to have to sit and reincarnate over and over and over, but we had been manipulated early on, and it caused us to be in this reincarnation traps. So it's like a trap. Our spirits are trapped on the earthbound consciousness, and we can't ascend beyond that because we keep getting caught in these cycles, and these cycles are being caused by us living out of accordance to spiritual truth. So when you're raping kids, you're not living in accordance to spiritual truth. You're going to be reincarnated again, and or lose the right to even having a body that can ascend. And so I get where they have this understanding that we weren't really meant to. We were going to come and do things the right way and then learn and go on. But of course, the reincarnation.
Yeah. I think, you know, if you look at the King James Bible, and there have been some new editions since then, but if you look at the King James Bible, there were over 15,000 omissions and some of them deliberate and mistakes.
Yeah.
And I can't remember which queen it was, but we're going back, you know, around those times, maybe 200 or 300 years in. And she didn't like the fact that because she was what we would class as a bad person, she didn't like the idea of reincarnation. So some of those were taken out. I haven't read the Bible for a long time, but I think there are still 2 references to incarnation. But again, yes, you know, you're right. It's all taken out. It's a remarkable document from the point of view of, you know, you had Jesus, fantastic medium and healer. You had people like Moses. Others had contact with spirit. And what they tried to do was say, that's truth. That's come from the divine energy, God, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. But actually, you can't be involved, because you're not on that level. And in the first 400 years, when Catholicism, Christianity was really growing, there were a lot of mediums involved. And what the church at that point realized was, you know, hey, they're not coming to us to listen. They're coming to us for the mediums. And obviously that didn't suit, and so they turned the whole thing on its head. And it's quite strange when you think about it. You know, they were given this information, how to connect to the energy, because they know how to do that, and then just say, right, we're just keeping this together. Don't tell anybody else. You know, and it's sorry, go on.
I was going to say, it's funny that you're saying that, because I'm not going to name the church that did this, but it's a church that I'm very, very, very well aware of their belief systems and such. Mm-hmm. But I saw a statement come out just this last year from this particular church telling its patrons, and they have a lot of patrons around the world, and they were telling them in this statement, and I can't say word for word what it said, but I'm just going to give you the gist. It was basically saying to them that they should not be listening to people who are saying that they have their own divine connection to God source, and that they should be going to the church itself for guidance. And I thought that was so damning. I couldn't believe that they would say that. I mean, you know, if anything, do I still have you, Leo?
Yes, still here. Yes, yeah.
I thought I saw you disappear. But anyway, yeah. Anything, you know, people should start to realize that they do very much have their own connection to the divine. And the moment that somebody's telling you you don't, you should probably run. I was just
absolutely. I think the thing, you obviously have the Jewish religion, and I'm sure most of us know the Bibles, and Jesus was clashing with authority then. But what we have to understand was that when the movement started, there were no churches as far as Christian and Catholic churches. He started the movement, and what he taught was, when he was giving sermons and talking to people, he was given that information in a trance-like state. There was a direct connection to spirit, and so what he was teaching was actually very close to what mediumship is today.
Exactly.
And he was saying, the truth, we don't need churches. It says in the Bible somewhere that God is within. So to build a whole organization around it and say, we've got the truth and we're going to tell you what you think you should know is ridiculous.
Right. Absolutely ridiculous. It really is. And yet at the same time, I will say that I do understand why people in lower states of consciousness or lesser evolved souls feel that they need to go to church for that connection, because they haven't found it within themselves yet. So I can see how it might be a bridge for some of them to gain knowledge and understanding of self. But the problem is they're being taught some things that are true and some things that are very screwy.
Absolutely, that's the thing. We're just going to go into a break and we'll be straight back after this.
You've been listening to Leo Bonomo, the host of The Voice of Spirit. Live every Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, guests, and host of The Voice of Spirit, or to book a private reading, please visit leo-bonomo.com. That's leo-bonomo.com. Your connection to the other side is just a phone call away. The Voice of Spirit.
It is amazing, is it not?
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist. This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
In the deep recesses of one's mind, there is a voice, a guiding light through the darkness, a connection to the other side.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just poor little me.
Pathway to spiritual that echoes with enlightenment. The Voice of Spirit.
The Voice of Spirit.
You are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way, and that furthermore, this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies.
Your journey starts here and now. With your host and connection to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, warm welcome back. We're talking about the fear of death, reincarnation, shadow healing. I've got a lovely lady, Ellen Red, very experienced. And if you want to contact her, or you're interested about shadow healing or any of the things that we've been talking about, you can find her on Facebook, and I recommend that you do. Hi, Ellen.
Hello.
Yeah, so we were talking about religion and more specifically the Bible just before the break, and it's quite something, isn't it? I was listening to a radio show many years ago, and I thought it was a comedy sketch because they were promoting the book, The Sex Lives of the Popes. And I thought, this is obviously a sketch, but it was deadly serious. And I actually bought the book, but I can't find it because I moved last year and I still haven't got half my stuff out of storage. But it was a real book, and it was talking about some of the things that have gone on Famously the Borgias, two brothers, were popes, connected to northern Italy. There was the sister, I can't think of her first name now, but a famous poisoner, Borgia, and they held orgies in the Vatican. It was very well known at the time. There was all kinds of things going on. There was even a Pope Joan, and the only reason they found out that she was a woman was because she gave birth in a procession. And if you go to Vatican City, there's a road no pope will go down, and that was because she gave birth in that road. So the real story of the papacy is quite amazing. There were three at one time, three separate popes who all went to war with each other. And the book, I have to be frank, I couldn't finish it because in some places it was absolutely sickening. But the interesting thing was that the Vatican didn't try and stop the book. I think basically because they couldn't deny it. And one of the things I found out, there were Pope Leos, so I'll give that as an example. But if you had like Pope Leo the Fifth, who was a poisoner and murderer, as some of them were, then the next Pope Leo that come along was called Pope Leo the Fifth. So you have what appears to be an unbroken succession. And there's so many things hidden. If it's something that you're interested in, it's a book I would highly recommend. I can't remember who wrote it, but it's easy to find. And that helped with my own growing up and understanding of spirit and where the contradictions were.
Right.
With that, it was something that really took my interest, and so I bought the book. But it's an amazing piece of work, and the thing that really amazed me was the church didn't ban it. I don't think they had any means or right to do that.
Yeah, that's interesting. We had a similar story in Utah where I grew up. Originally, I was born and raised in Utah, and there was a story out there. It wasn't really about that, but it was a similar story where the church tried to cover up an event that happened there called the Mountain Meadow Massacre. And it's where a certain group of the Mormons, when they early on, when they settled in that territory, they ended up having, that was during the gold rush, and a whole lot of people were traveling through the territory to get to California for the gold rush. And I can't remember the number, but I do believe it was in the hundreds that people were murdered, men, women, and children. So they all, landed in the land and settled down to camp for a day or two or whatever, and they all ended up murdered. And these people dressed up like Native Americans, and it was covered up by the church for like 150 years. And only recently, because enough people made noise over it, did they finally have some scholars come out from the church and say, okay, yes, this was a mark on our
It's I mean, it is incredible, and I think part of what we're going through now, with the attempting to rewrite history, there's that old saying, isn't there, that history is written by the victors. In other words, they wipe everything out they don't like and make themselves look wonderful. And I think one of the reasons that we shouldn't perhaps move statues or something like that, that's one thing. But we shouldn't forget, we shouldn't bury it, because that's been the whole problem with the human race. We don't seem to learn, and we continue to make the same mistakes. And I think that if we're reminded that this is what we did wrong, which is the way we live, isn't it? We make mistakes, we learn, hopefully. So I think it's one of those things that, yes, acknowledge it. Yes, it happened. Let's learn and move on from that. So I think some of this woke society is not. it's trying to just blank things out rather than say let's move on.
Right. And eventually that will cause dysfunction, distortions, and illness and all kinds of issues on a collective level for the people. So trying to bury it is the worst thing that you can do. Trying to erase all of it is the worst thing that you can do on a soul level, because you can't heal that way.
My guy's just giving an interesting kind of analogy with that. And he says, well, it's like drinking poison and not allowing yourself to be sick, which was a strange analogy.
Right.
But, it makes sense, because the body naturally wants to clear it so that you have a chance of recovery. And we're not doing that. But, interesting thing. What's your thoughts on the world going forward and perhaps religion adapting? Because I know the Catholic Church admitted some years ago that spirit exists, that it's not banned to communicate. It wasn't a very wide publication, but it did acknowledge that. Where do you think the world's going in that sense?
Well, I think that we are, I do believe that we are having a great awakening, and that there are lots of souls that are starting to become awakened and remember their own soul and their own connection to the divine, so they don't have the same belief structures that would fit within the religious paradigms. Not because there's not some truth within those paradigms, but if those religions don't begin to be honest and genuine within, the truth of the soul, they're going to lose their patrons, for one thing. But I do also see, even I have recently seen a few things that tell me that even the religious leaders in certain religions are starting to shift the things that they're saying. So they're having quote unquote revelations to shift to align more with the truth, because if they don't, they're going to be out in the dark by themselves. There's so many people awakening, and we have a long way to go yet, but there are a lot that are awakening and sharing truth, and they're not going to be able to keep it covered up very much longer.
Yeah, I mean, over here we're having churches close. If you go back, sorry, I seem to have a frog in the throat. If you go back, 60 years or so, it was very, very rare for a church to be closed and sold. There had to be a real precedent for that to happen. And now churches are being sold. You're getting car parks built where they were. You're getting shops and different things. There is less and less of a congregation. So I know that it's difficult. I know to an extent, because of bad mediumship, that's also happening to spiritualist churches over here. There are lots of sort of political reasons as well within that, for I don't mean political in the sense of the government, political reasons within spiritualism, why things are closing. Again, land is valuable, and they sell a church and somebody built a block of flats on it. There's a lot of money to be made. So there's all kinds of things happening there. But I think because there are more mediums, because people are having more experiences, reincarnation experiences, near death, and thank God for the internet, because people are now talking about it. Decades ago, if you started mentioning that you heard voices, there was only one way that you were headed, and that's to the local mental institution.
Right.
And now that people talk about it freely, so I think with the exchange of knowledge is helping a lot.
It is. But like I said, I do think we still have a long way to go, but I agree. And I also heard that the LDS Church, the Mormons, bought out Zoom for that reason, that they've stopped having church ceremonies all around the globe. and they bought Zoom, the platform itself, so that they could host their church services through that. So I do think there's something that to be said about the fact that a lot of the large CEOs and elitists and corporations and things like that started stepping down from their positions and selling stock. And when I heard that the Mormons started telling people not to go to church, that's when I knew that COVID was a serious issue, and that we needed to pay attention to what was going on, because that was profound. It was huge for them to do that globally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, there are lots of financial pitfalls with that, because if you're encouraging that, then you don't need churches. Then you've either got to let them go to another faith, or just sell the thing, have it knocked down, and build a department store. And there's a lot of money involved in buildings, of course, and it's a huge consideration to say, what do we do? Do we just sell this off? What do we do with the money? It's a huge thing.
Yeah, it's really huge, and it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. And I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting.
It'll definitely be interesting. And again, I think with the focus, I think one of the terrible things about the COVID thing is that we've been so frightened by it. We've lost, sight of the facts, which is it varies in different parts of the world, but we're looking at 3% of people passing away. So that's 97% of us are surviving, whether we've got it or whether we've not got it.
And yet,
to make
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Keep going.
No, that's fine. And so to make worldwide changes based on that, which is really based on fear, is a big thing. But one of the things I find very sad is that traditionally, when someone's not well, they're extremely ill, or they're definitely going to pass, most people have a fear. A lot of people have a fear of passing alone. And of course, that comfort that was there, that was taken away as well. And for me, that's something that's quite sad, to have that restriction.
We already experienced that with one of the grandmothers in my family, where she passed away by herself in a hospital because of COVID, even though she didn't have it. So that's a real tragic thing, and it also very much affects the soul. So when the soul is crossing over and they're not embraced by the loved ones, of course they have loved ones in the non-physical that are there to embrace them as they do transition over. But it's nice you can have them on this side too, so you're fully embraced. But
yeah, I mean, it's a two-way thing, isn't it? Because whether you believe or not, it's the last chance to physically give them a hug or just be there as a support. And there have been lots of people commenting about, the most tragic part of this is that's been taken away from them.
Babies coming in that are also not able to be embraced fully as they're incarnating onto the planet. So it's a very cold way to enter this world. We have I have a niece right now. I guess she's a niece that just had a baby, and the baby can't be around the family coming in. The baby's left in the hospital in the care of hospital workers right now, and the family around her. And so it's really and that stuff very much affects the soul. It's going to leave a soul imprint and a soul wound that the soul is going to have to go through, both those incarnating and those that are exiting.
And my guys just give me really something to think about. And it's if a baby animal is born, it'll connect to the first thing that resonates. So if chicks have hatched and the first thing they see is you, and you're giving them food and different things, you are their mother. That's the imprint that they have. And of course, with a child, it's kid needs the mother there. You know, the love has to be shared. It has to connect with a human being. And I think with the best will in the world, doctors and nurses can't stand there cuddling it or that, you know, it's put in an incubator. And I think you're absolutely right that those first perhaps months of being detached in that way, that would, I would think, have a psychological effect.
Absolutely. I mean, there's been studies on that, not enough, obviously, but there have been some studies on that. And of course, the lack of affection and the lack of touch and things like that can actually cause the baby to die. So, and even elderly people to die when they lose the physical touch and the physical, you know, connection with other beings. So it's a really tragic, and I find that to be also tragic because they're now limiting the children. At least where I live in Las Vegas, they're now stopping children from going to public schools. So this year, none of them are going to be going to public school. So they're going to lose all of their connection to other souls and other people their age, and it's kind of like a sterile, sort of robotic thing that they're shaping us into. And I mean, we could have a whole nother show. Maybe I'll have to get on Jimmy's Matrix show, but we could do a whole nother show on how, you know, what I think is going on in terms of the deep state and what they're doing, you know, why they're doing this. But I don't think this is the right show or the right time. But it's you know, I mean, we do need to pay attention to what's going on because there's a lot more than just by accident this virus came along, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's a real important point that you've brought out because, you know, it's very important, certainly when we're young, to learn those social skills. And in a sense, it's bad enough because teenagers, you know, they're physically joined to their phone. You know, they just don't put it down. It's a society that in that sense has become very isolationist. But if you're not developing the people skills, you know, whilst you're at school and understanding life in that way, it's a real it has so many knock-on effects psychologically.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we're already we're already becoming desensitized, so much so in our society that nobody even blinks when you talk about a woman getting raped or a child getting raped. And if we're so afraid of COVID, how come nobody's talking about the millions of kids that go missing every year? How come nobody's talking about the millions of people that die every year from cigarette smoking? And yet they allow that. If these people really cared about our well-being so much, how come they're not eliminating cigarettes and tobacco products on the market that are killing people by the millions every year? So again, there's a lot more going on here that politically and more propaganda, I think, that's going on that people need to pay attention to. Because, you know, why aren't we talking about all these kids that are going missing and getting raped and molested and used for blood sacrifice and, you know, that type of a thing? If we care so much about people, how come we don't talk about this in the news? Why isn't the news talking about this?
Yeah, I think it probably digs up a lot of skeletons, and no pun intended. I mean, in a sense, we are as a race kinder to animals, because if we have a pet and they're not well, you know, one of the decisions that we may have to make at some point is, do they carry on, or is it kinder to put them down? And quite often that decision will be made. We tend, though, not to look at humans in that same sense. And there have been a few cases over here where the people have been more or less unable to communicate, except perhaps through a computer. And they have been in dreadful, dreadful pain, very debilitated, and the condition growing worse. And we have the notion that, well, we're different, so we've got to sustain life, and we've got to sustain this person against their will, and they have that pain to endure. And yes, of course, there are painkillers and different things. But I think if any of us were in a position of saying, you've got another 20 years of excruciating pain, you can't do anything for yourself at all, and that's what you're going to have to suffer. We wouldn't do that to an animal. And I'm not sure I'm really advocating euthanasia at all. But we seem to treat animals in a far better way than we do humans, and it's very uneven.
Yeah, absolutely true.
I know the Aborigines and probably the native Red Indian at some point the Aborigines, when they realised that they were going to pass, they would go walkabout, and they would say goodbye to their families, and they would walk out into the outback and literally sit under a tree and wait for life to end. Again, they had a different understanding, and Tina's just made an interesting point. She says Eskimos would walk onto an ice shelf and drift away. Because there was that understanding, now is the time, we're going to wake up in heaven, whatever name we give it, and everything's okay. But we treat humans in a different way, and, just sustain life. I realised something not so long ago, and I can't think what it's called, but the oath that doctors take to try and sustain life. They don't take that anymore. Doctors are not trained. The Hippocratic Oath. Thank you, Tina. And they don't say the Hippocratic Oath anymore. And I asked a couple of people why, and it's because there are complications. They get bonuses for advocating this particular drug and that particular drug, and intrinsically they know it's not good for them. They would break the oath. So the solution is we don't take the oath anymore. We're just going to go, hi and welcome back. And once again, it's gone so fast. Got a lovely lady, Ellen Red, very experienced and extraordinary experiences that she's had. And if you want to get in contact with her, then you can find her on Facebook. It's spelled ELLEN, and Red is spelled REDD. And I highly recommend, if you want to look her up, lovely ladies you can hear. And if you've just joined the show, then you'll find it in the archives. So welcome back, Ellen. There are various ways, aren't there, in which we can be separated from the body. And obviously a near-death experience is one. If we practice trance or physical mediumship, we allow ourselves to be shifted out of our body, and that's kind of another example for spirit to come in. But we can also astral travel, which is literally, it's another vehicle, isn't it? It's the astral body, not the soul. You've had some experience of that. So when did that start for you? When was your first experience?
I remember being a teenager and astral traveling a lot, and it just seemed so natural to me. I never really thought, I didn't know what it was. I just understood that that's what I was doing. And then I really didn't understand what it was or know the term for it or anything, so I didn't put much thought into it. And then years later, maybe in my 30s, I started to really have some profound spiritual experiences and psychic experiences, and that's when I started to be able to astral travel naturally. I started to do it through meditation and transmeditative states. So the first time it happened that I was consciously aware, other than when I was a teenager, I actually went into doing some Montauk Chia meditation, and there's a meditation called the Cosmic Smile. And I was practicing that out in my backyard, and it really goes into making the six healing sounds of Montauk Chia. And as you're doing it, you're visualizing this cosmic smile. And when I did that, I projected my astral body out into the, into the astral world, consciously and awake and aware. And then that kind of was right around the time that I started to have my Kundalini awakening. And and then at that point I was able to start just doing it more regularly. So now I actually go into trance states. Sometimes I'll go into them for 2 weeks at a time and just go out into the astral world and do whatever I'm doing there, and then come back to Earth again.
I do remember some astral worlds traveling, and again, just like heaven or Summerland, there are various spheres, there are various layers and places. But most of mine was traveling here, and mine used to happen from, I suppose, about the age of 8, when I had a near-death experience at home, up to probably about the age of coming up for 11 and 12. And I used to call it flying, because I would imagine running and diving, and the action of diving, just like Superman, arms in front, just flying out. And I used to have wonderful experiences like that. And I didn't really connect the two. It was just something that I could do. And it would often happen spontaneously as well. So it was something that I really enjoyed. And as I started to approach puberty, and I don't know if this has happened with many other people, but being sensitive enough and seeing spirit an awful lot, to have to contend with the emotion of puberty and everything else,
Right.
a lot of it shut down. And it's only been, I think, a couple of times since then that it's happened spontaneously. It hasn't happened for years. So it's something that I miss, but enjoyed.
Yeah. Well, it's something you can also revamp in your system again too, just with intention, and again, that's where the healing comes in. And I don't know. I mean, I guess you have to give yourself the space and time to be able to set aside everything else that you're doing in the physical world, and that's why a lot of yogis, they unplug from the physical world, and they unplug from their jobs and that type of stuff, so that they can go into those trance states to go out and do the astral travel and the spiritual traveling. So I don't know. I guess it depends on the.
Oh, sorry. Carry on.
I was saying it just depends on the person, I guess, and what your intentions are, and what you're seeking.
Yeah, I used to use a technique where I was lying in bed, so I was horizontal, and if you can imagine, like a spindle through the center of the body sidewards, and I used to kind of pivot, and so I would be feet and head swinging wildly until I would get sort of momentum and then stand up. And I released myself from my body that way. And that was a technique that I used. And then it got to a point where that just wasn't working for me. One of my guides said that, I don't need it anymore. It is something I miss. And it's happened a couple of times involuntary. But I think it's an amazing thing, because when you're out of your body in that way, it is a huge confirmation that you don't need your body. You exist separately. Yeah. So what's the most enjoyable or profound experience that you've had astrally?
Oh gosh. Well, I've had quite a lot of fun ones, good times, because I've spent really the last 10 years mostly. I detached from my work and all of that for 10 years and gone into really deep trance states. And I've had so many good ones and I think we talked about this on your last show, where I connected with my twin flame, and we did the tantric sex together, many times in the astral world. And I've learned to travel to New Earth, so I've had really beautiful experiences with that. And for those that don't know what that is, it's basically another dimension, the fifth dimension, where you're able to access another planetary Earth that's different than this one, where there's no wars and nothing. It's kind of similar to what you would see in the movie Avatar. And that's been a beautiful experience of just going there and being able to travel there and feel all the souls that are already there, that are helping to create the new Earth, that are existing in a utopian state, which is where we're ascending to for those of us that are on the ascension path, right?
Absolutely. I think one of the most striking things about the film Avatar, when I first saw it, when it first came out, within 10 minutes, I knew that the essential things were, it was talking about spirit, and it was talking about the Native American Indian and that connection with Earth. I was blown away.
I had my spiritual awakening, and I didn't see that movie for several years, and I kept telling people, I was so astounded by my awakening itself, because it just takes your breath away, and you have this full remembrance of your beautiful angelic self and of those higher dimensions. And as I was talking about it to certain people, they kept telling me to watch the movie. And when I finally watched it, I was so in love, because it was so much a depiction of what I experienced in my spiritual awakening. And so, that's really where I travel to a lot when I go into the astral world. I'm tethering back and forth to New Earth, because I'm in that ascension process, and I'm in that process of, creating the New Earth, and so that's really probably one of my best experiences with that. Although I've also had some pretty awesome experiences traveling through lots and lots and lots of dimensions, going all the way back to source, and in the process seeing all sorts of different things and creatures and beings and planets, and just seeing that I've traveled enough to see that there is life on many other planets than this.
Yeah, absolutely. I've said this many times, but man is so arrogant to think we're the only life force ever.
Totally. It really is.
I mean, we don't even know what's at the bottom of the oceans yet, let alone, we're finding new species in the Amazon, even though it's been destroyed at a rate of knots. Every day we can find something new. But it's, I suppose it's man being man. I had an experience one time when I was astral projecting, and it started off to me as a strange kind of dream. And I don't really remember the start of it, but I remember, and this has actually come out in Summerland. I realised that it had worked its way into the book, and I found myself flying and then landing on top of the ramparts of an old castle. And I remember walking along the ramparts, and behind me, quite some distance away, but the power of this thing was incredible, and it landed, and it was literally sucking out the light, and I realized this wasn't something good. And I ran to the end of the ramparts, and there was a door in a tower, and I was frantically banging on it, trying to get this door to open. And what I hadn't realized in my panic was that I hadn't turned the lock. And so I barely made it in when this thing was approaching the door. And I found myself in a very small room. And the door opened, and the light was sucked from this, and there was a small gap. And I realized that I had the choice at that point to throw myself out the window. I was some 80, 100 foot up. I knew I wasn't going to survive, or, what was the choice? And I dived through the window, and this thing followed me, and it was falling faster than I was. So it landed. And at that point I woke up. My chest was hurting. I was sweating profusely. My breathing was, it's like I'd run a marathon. And it took me, a good 10 minutes to calm down. and I fell asleep, and immediately I fell asleep. I was in the same dream. I was still falling. This thing was waiting for me to hit the ground, and I knew that I would not survive because it would take my soul. And I woke up again, still sweating, still trying to catch my breath. And this happened a few times, and every time I closed my eyes and went off, I was back in that position. And consequently, I woke up and determined to stay awake. But so for me, that was it wasn't that one quite a frightening thing. But eventually, obviously, it didn't have power over me. But that came out in Summerland. That was the only time I was ever kind of, I would say, frightened. And
well,
I know.
I'm glad
Sorry.
you brought that up too, just for the listeners' sake, that when you astral travel, there are non-benevolent entities that are in the astral realm also. So it's always advisable to do some protection, do some meditative protection over your soul and your aura before you go into those states, because of that type of experience, right? There's there's always dark and light everywhere. So
absolutely, and again, for me, it was a valuable experience because it underlined the fact that there are darker worlds. I wouldn't call them hell, but they are much lower vibrations. Places where you literally cannot see your hand in front of your face. Very dark. But of course, 99% of us won't reach those lower levels. But it was an eye-opening thing for me, and strange as it may sound, I was very grateful to have had that, because it kind of explained things that in such a way that I understood, which is I think perhaps I'm just weird like that, but I was grateful for that experience. So it's a wonderful thing. I think if I could have one wish for the world, it would be that peace and love would prevail, and also that more people could find that connection to spirit, in a pleasant way, not the way I've just described, of course.
Right. What else?
So,
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, what would you wish for the world? Particularly bearing in mind this stressful time we're going through.
Oh, I just would wish that people would tune into their own soul more and turn the TV off. Even Facebook sometimes can be just really a lot of overwhelming misinformation. There's, the stuff that's true. They now have these quote unquote fact checkers that are tuning off the truth, and yet there's still a lot of misinformation then being spread there. So I think the best thing to do for everybody is to tune into nature, because nature's the best healer that there is. And this is such a great time to get out in nature and just tune into Mother Earth and heal your own spirit. Get in sunshine. That helps your immune system. It keeps you, healthy and healed and whole, and clears your energy. So I would say to tune in to nature, but also to just know that again, the deaths that, like you brought up, the numbers in this COVID are so minuscule compared to what happens every year with smokers and drinkers and babies missing. And I mean, the reality is the numbers just do not make sense at all. There's a bigger picture going on, and you should be asking yourself what it is, because we are at a pivotal point here where the collective together has the ability to overcome the darkness, if you will, or to overcome, it's kind of like we're coming out of the dark ages, and in order to do that, we all have to open our eyes, right?
Exactly. Yeah. There's definitely some control being exerted, but again, I think as more and more people are becoming aware of Donald Trump's fake news and all the ways we're being manipulated, I think it's a good thing that people are waking up. I'm not necessarily convinced that they're thinking I should do something about this, or I should switch to somewhere which is telling me the truth. I think people are still blinded, but at least if we're awake, then we have a choice whether we believe it or not, and whether we try and do something about it or not. Another choice, but yeah.
But the more you tune into your soul, the more you're guided, naturally on what to do and how, and it's such a whole different world too, because again, you can go into a totally different reality. So this earthly third dimensional state of being is to me, it's really unbearable and boring and all of that stuff. To me, I like to stay in the higher states of consciousness, because that's also how we can create a different reality for ourselves, even in the physical world, right? That's really what manifestation.
Absolutely. And the vibration is shifting, is becoming higher. And as people become aware of it, we just need, 1 or maybe 2% of people to understand the light, try and project it and ask for light, to really flip this coin of the world and to flip the whole thing around. So we're talking, again, minuscule numbers, but right. As people wake, it will make huge changes.
Right. Yeah, and that's what we really need. And I think we're on that pivotal kind of turning point there collectively, where we are kind of seeing a lot of people wake up, and even if they're not fully awakened, they're aware, and that's powerful, because people are the ones with the power, and we really do have the ability to shift and change things based on our collective energy.
Absolutely. I think when you look at the amount of politicians in any one country, you're looking at 0.00001% that control the rest, and it's us that vote them in. And to me, it's amazing. I mean, it's obviously the same here. It's the same in every country, right. And you think, we're handing these people power to punish us. Same as with the farmers. The pharmaceuticals. It's and I think as we gradually realise that we're doing it to ourselves, I hope that we'll be able to stop that and make a move on.
And that all comes from just learning how to become self-empowered, which comes from really tuning into your soul and remembering and realizing that you're an eternal being, a powerful, eternal God seed. And you have within you all of the answers, and you have within you all of the strength that you need and everything else. And as you do it, you start to realize there's a whole network of other empowered beings on this planet that are fighting for the truth, that are your support system when you yourself just become brave enough to stand up and speak up. And that's
absolutely.
And that's where our change is going to happen. So
yeah, I think, one of the things that's really happening now is that the dark is really understanding that, again, this coin's going to flip. And I think that's why they're trying to introduce fear on different levels. That's why they're trying to affect us negatively. Because it's human nature, if you're wounded and wounded often enough, we will react. And I think a lot of this, the pharmaceuticals and wars that are starting, it's all provocation to get that reaction to feed into the darkness. And I think we're getting to a point where we realise this game we've played for thousands and thousands of years is not only not benefiting us, but we're realising actually there's very few people that benefit. We're handing them control on a plate. And I think for me, that's the most exciting thing, that we are waking up, we're beginning to realise it's a game, and actually we're giving control away.
Exactly. And I think that they know that some of us are waking up now, and so they are going for full-blown control right now. That's why you're seeing them. They had the whole planet locked down in a matter of a couple of days or a couple of weeks. And that is kind of intimidating. It is. But with us speaking up and standing up and resisting it, the more of us that do that, the more we're going to be able to turn the tables. But we do need the collective to kind of wake up and see what's going on here. It's a much bigger picture than just some flu bug that got created in China.
Absolutely. You know, it's the bully is now feeling threatened, and it's flexing its muscles. So, you know, it's actually a good sign, even though it is how we see it, and it is slightly threatening. It's been wonderful to talk to you again. Very enlightening. I've learned lots, and I'm sure lots of others have as well. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And I always enjoy speaking with you.
Oh, it's a real privilege for me. And, you know, we'll give it a few months and definitely have you back on. Once again, thank you. And if you want to get in contact with Ellen Red, then you can do so on Facebook. Thank you so much, and we shall see you next week.